Now joining me in the studio, I still have right here Professor Bola Akintenwa, Director General, Bolitag Center for International Diplomacy and Strategic Studies, and former Director General of the Nigerian Institute of International Affairs. Modele Sharafa Yusuf is also here, a Rise News analyst, veteran Nigerian journalist. And Yemi Adamolekun, Executive Director, Enough is Enough, and Professor Victor Ariole, Professor of French and Francophone Studies at the University of Lagos, Nigeria. Yemi Adamolekun, well, let me start with you. Our guest, the energy economist and expert and advisor on privatization, was saying more or less that organized labor should not complain about the courageous decision, his words, that the NNPC and the federal government of Nigeria are planning to take with regard to the pump price of fuel, because that's just the reality, and that fuel can never, in his opinion, be cheap in Nigeria. So Nigerians should prepare to pay 243 naira per liter, 500 naira per liter for fuel at the petrol stations. What's your reaction?
Thank you. As I watched Mr. Dankule speak, I was a mix of half irritated, half not understanding what he was saying, half wondering where he was going. But yeah, a couple of things. Let me start from where he stopped by really just railing into the Labour Congress. I have my issues with the Labour Congress. I'm not a socialist, so some of the things they fight for vis-a-vis privatization, I don't agree with. However, for him to kind of bucket their fight or their advocacy, if I want to use that word, to petroleum issues in all of their work, I think was a bit disingenuous and really it was just quite dismissive about it. The Labour Union is the same body that has fought for minimum wage, getting it from 18 to 30,000, and now trying to ensure that across the states, their members are not at the mercy of any state government who can just do whatever they want and say, we can't pay 30, it's only 18 we can pay. So, I mean, they should be given some credit for that. But I do agree with him on issues of privatizing NITEL or privatizing power, where the issues are. But again, the advocacy has also raised issues around the privatization of electricity in terms of the management of it. It was privatized by federal government has shares in the entities that came up. I think it's only in Yola Disco, I believe, where federal government is 100% owner. But their point has consistently been, at least the part of it that I align with, is this issue of metering. And they consistently say that as long as the private companies are allowed to hide behind estimated billing, that citizens will continue to pay for electricity that they are not consuming. And in AIE's work, we've seen that over and over again, that it's easier to give an estimated bill when somebody doesn't have a meter. But if you have a meter, then you can decide if you want to turn off all your lights or you want to leave part of your light on to determine how much you have to pay. The rate of it, again, is subject to market forces, and we deal with that as it is. Now, to petrol subsidy, ongoing issue, we've done the history of it. My involvement with it started with the Occupy Nigeria protest in 2012. The issues then, fast forward 10 years, are still the same now. It's just, and for me, it rests on the inability of government to be honest about the issues and then be honest about a plan to deal with the issues. Yes, are we losing petroleum products across our borders? Yes, we are. So where people in Nigeria are paying 200 naira, subsidized people in Chad or in wherever are paying 300, 400, 500. Yes. Is that a fault of the Nigerian citizens? Hell no. Is that a fault of the Nigerian government's incompetence? Most definitely. We said that in 2012. We're still at it now. Number two, this whole notion that our Minister of Petroleum is being courageous. I really don't know how I cannot use the word courageous with our Minister of Petroleum. It cannot fit in the same sentence, because this is the same man who said when he came into office in 2015 that fuel subsidy was a lie, was a scam, and that there's no such thing. So they're not telling me it's taking him 6 years to realize that he was lying to himself 6 years ago, or he refused to deal with the truth 6 years ago, and now he suddenly now woke up. And then it will be a very different dynamic if our dear Minister of Petroleum, who has not addressed Nigerians on this matter, by the way. Our dear Minister of Petroleum actually then had a conversation with his citizens and said, look, I misunderstood this dynamic. I didn't understand it, obviously, because I don't pay attention to things, but he doesn't need to admit that. Just say, I didn't understand it. I misunderstood it. But now I understand it. I understand that this thing is not sustainable. And this is what we're looking at. And this is the plan, that as petroleum price increases, because it affects, to your excellent point to Mr. Dan Kunle, he completely ignored the knock-on effects on petroleum, basically saying that citizens pay also for private schools. We shouldn't be paying for private schools. If our public schools work, I went to a public school. If our public schools work, people wouldn't pay for private schools. If our public hospitals were equipped enough to deal with illnesses, people wouldn't pay high prices for private healthcare. So as you told him, the parallels are neither here nor there. Are not there, not even neither here nor there, are completely unaligned. But the knock-on effects of increasing petroleum prices and what that means to cost of living to Nigerians. So if our Minister of Petroleum had that conversation, and that for me would be courage. If our Minister of Petroleum addressed Nigerians about his own ignorance, his own errors, and why we are where we are now, 6 years into his administration, because he refused to deal with the issues. In January, you were saying March and April, market forces. They've been doing this, their template, since January, if I'm not mistaken, and saying that we will be paying prices. But it was sort of okay then, because the price was not as high. But now that it's suddenly this high, everybody's now like, what are we going to do? We cannot do this. Is it that they did not know? I mean, forecasts were showing that if petrol price continues to go high, you can't do this. When he came in, petroleum prices were actually low. So he literally could have removed it at that time, and then we would have been adjusting as we went along over the last couple of years. But again, a government, and lastly, let me end with this one. Mr. Dankule's point about we have a lot of issues that as a country we need to be honest with ourselves about. Security, blah, blah, blah. On that one, I actually agree with him completely. So if our government does not understand that governance constitutes the connectedness of all these things, healthcare, education, security, petroleum prices, transparency in government. I mean, how can we have 3 refineries that haven't produced nada in 4 years? We're paying salaries. The Accountant General of Federation's report that came out, I think last year, that was headline news about how much we're paying in salaries for people who are doing nothing. And you now decide you want to use Nigeria's money to fix a refinery you want to sell. And you think, so some of these things just don't make sense. And it's not even about just the petroleum pump price. It's about surrounding issues about it. Let me end with this, sorry. Turnaround maintenance cost has been a line item in our budget since I don't know when. Even Mrs. Diziani, when she was petroleum minister in 2012, promised that, we are going to turn our refineries around. 6 years later, we're still here. So what are we talking about?
Yeah, you mean Diziani, okay. Alison Madueke, former Minister of Petroleum Resources. But very quickly, let me come to you, Modele. What kind of reform do we exactly need to be able to address all of these issues that have been raised? Because we should begin to look for solutions now.
Well, before I talk about solutions, I'd like to say a few things about what Mr. Kule said. When we keep saying that when we increase the price of petroleum products, it will affect the economy adversely. There is more to the Nigerian economy, the Nigerian economy than petroleum products. There are different estimates about how much exactly has been spent on subsidy over the years. People estimate that up to 10% of the national budget has been spent every year on subsidy for the last 10 years, for example. The estimates vary because it's really a very opaque thing. It's just this black hole that we keep throwing money at. But subsidy alone is taking about 10% of the budget. While sectors like education and health are not so favored. In the 2021 budget, for example, education is getting about 5% of the total budget. Health is getting about 7%, despite all of these challenges that we have. And yet we keep saying that we should keep spending money on subsidy. At one point, we have to draw the line. it is clear. Yemi herself said, just like Mr. Akunle said, like everybody said, that the biggest beneficiaries of this subsidy are the neighboring countries, Chad, Niger, Benin Republic. While Nigeria is paying for subsidy on about 50 to 60 million liters of petroleum products, of PMS, for example, per day, the estimate by DPR is that Nigeria actually needs about 30 to 40 million liters of petroleum of petrol per day. Where is all of that extra going? Why do we keep doing that to ourselves when we clearly can stop this and invest more money on public education, on health? There has to be a tough decision. Government is about taking tough decisions, and this is a decision that I think government should take. And the art of leadership is about being able to take decisions. Stop avoiding difficult conversations. Make that decision that you should have made 5 years ago, 10 years ago. If now is the time to do it, let us do it and move forward. As for the Port Harcourt refinery, I have only one sentence for that. Stop throwing good money after bad.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Modele. I know this is a subject that everyone is concerned about, and it could take us a little more time. So quickly, let me come to you, Professor Ariole, before we take a break, and then I'll come to Professor Akinterenwa.
I'm really worried because what Dan Kunle said, show that yeah, he's very much aware of what is going on. And bringing it to the labor side, you know, I'm not completely in agreement with him because I don't see why the whole Central Africa, that is not up to 60 million, if you remove Congo Democratic Republic, that is about 90 million, will be a problem for us in terms of our petroleum products going to those areas. And we know that Gabon, for example, that is producing oil like Nigeria, export about 200,000 barrels a day, and they have about 10% of it for their internal consumption. And as of today, it's about 500 naira per liter. Agree. And why is it that other people don't come and pry into Gabon's own petroleum consumption? Like Cameroon, like Chad, like DR, they're all within Central African Republic. Why should it be Nigeria's own petroleum product that is going out, and we don't seem to know how to harmonize maybe and get better profit out of it? If Gabon is selling at 500 naira per liter, Nigeria could find a way to sell 450 naira and still get there. I'm not saying that subsidy is okay, but within subsidy also look at Gabon, that is comparatively or relatively the same thing as Nigeria in terms of oil production. Their minimum wage is about 150,000 naira a month. 150,000. Nigeria is still struggling with 30,000 naira a month. And in Gabon, the minimum wage there is not even the issue. The Gabonese woman who is pregnant 3 months is already receiving welfare for the child that is already 3 months in the womb. So you see, all these things are factored into their life, and it makes life very easy for them. Not necessarily the minimum wage you are paying them. They are receiving 150,000 naira a month. Nigeria is receiving only 30,000, and it's still the same oil-producing countries. You know, so government should come up with worthy things to help the poor workers.
Prof,
seriously,
Prof, you recall that Mr. Kunle's point is that whatever is spawned good out of Nigeria is really nothing that we need to worry about.
Exactly.
But on that note, we'll take a short break, and then we'll come back after that commercial break, and Professor Akinterenwa will have his take on this interesting subject. Welcome back to This Day Live, the Sunday talk show here on the Arise News channel. I still have with me in the studio Professor Bola Akinterenwa, and also right here is Yemi Adamolekun, Executive Director in Office Enough, Arise News Analyst Modele Sharafa Yusuf, and Professor Victor Ariole, Professor of French and Francophone Studies at the University of Lagos, Nigeria. Prof, we're still on this subject of fuel subsidy, how it is unsustainable, and you listen to Mr. Dan Kunle, the energy economist, who was our guest. Very quickly, your take.
Yes, Dan Kunle gave us a number of issues to reflect on. The first point to draw attention to is simply that there's a basic conflict between his position and the government decision to approve 1.5 billion for renovation of the Port Harcourt refinery. Conflict because I have to ask, is it that President Muhammadu Buhari intends to renovate with the ultimate objective of now selling to the general public? Although Dan Kunle quickly told us his own personal position that if he were to be Mr. President, he will just ask for the carcass, that is, break down, sell the whole institutions, sell the businesses out, because he did ask the question, what's happening to other refineries if we are now focusing attention only on the Port Harcourt refinery? Second point, he made an affirmation that petroleum can never be cheap in Nigeria. Most unfortunately, the affirmation, he tried to give the reasons. He talked about environmental conditionings not being favorable, not friendly. And I will agree with him. But on the basis of his ability to give us why there will not be any cheap petroleum in Nigeria, those arguments, he gave us a myopic explanation, untold explanation there. Myopic in the sense that if the environmental conditionings are addressed, by implication, it simply means that petroleum can be cheap. So, the basis, the hypothetical rationale behind his statement that there will never be any cheap petroleum in Nigeria is based on the assumption, on the hypothesis that the government of Nigeria, the people of Nigeria, will never be able to address the environmental conditions. And that cannot be tenable, a scientific argument. Third point, he talked about what happens in terms of mixed energy issues. He gave us his experience on the basis of the satellite imagery, telling us about the future problem, expansion of desertification. I will agree with him. He said that the 4 refineries have not produced anything in the past 3-4 years. Yemi beautifully addressed that particular issue. And in this case, what I will say is that, in essence, we need to ask questions. In 4 years' time, we have been told that there will, oil will be irrelevant. Now, why are we renovating a refinery that will not be relevant in 4 years' time? And if gas is supposed to be the next thing and is very expensive, now why are we not addressing that?
Anyway, Prof, on that note, let's move on to our very next topic. We've spent some time on this very important one. The Fulani Cultural Group, Miyetti Allah, is asking the federal government of Nigeria to earmark 150 billion naira for ranching and the development of livestock farming in the country. The group spokesman says ranching comes with many benefits and herdsmen are willing to rear cattle in a modernized way if the infrastructure for ranching is put in place by the government. He also addressed herders' attacks, saying they are being exaggerated in the southern part of the country to score political points. Meanwhile, Muslim cleric Ahmad Gumi has continued with his support for bandits. This time, he is clamoring for their safety. While addressing a virtual event hosted by the National Institute for Legislative and Democratic Studies on Nigeria's security challenges, Sheyi Gumi solicited for a dialogue between the government and bandits, noting that if there is no guarantee of their safety when reintegrated into society, they will not give up their arms. Okay, Sheyi Gumi there saying that bandits need amnesty. Before now, he said that in fact they are not criminals and they should not be described as criminals. And then the spokesperson, Alasan of the Miyetti Allah, saying that the group will need 150 billion naira to set up ranches. Although many members of the Miyetti Allah, they say different things at different times. And if you give cattle rearers 150 billion to set up ranches, are we going to give the same amount to fishermen and also to other livestock farmers to set up either, piggeries or poultries, or to set up other agricultural, units
of course.
within that value chain? Modele, let me start with you.
Yes, Ruben, thank you very much. First of all, I find it curious that we are even lumping the Miyetti Allah and ranching efforts together with banditry in the north in this topic that we're discussing. That's the kind of false narrative that is fueling paranoia, hate speech, and potentially xenophobia. We really shouldn't fall into that trap. The Miyetti Allah are a socio-cultural group that are out to help herders and settle them and get, they believe in ranching. They're an organization that was set up in around 1970, I'm told. They believe in ranching. They are a socio-political and economic group. Banditry is banditry. Banditry is outlaws, thieves, robbers operating in largely ungoverned areas, which the Northeast and the Northwest is increasingly looking like. So that said, I think the Miyetti Allah are an entitled organization who are overreaching themselves at every turn and who have been handed more relevance and hence more power than they deserve. It's like saying, as you said, the cattle or the Cement Dealers Association of Nigeria are asking government for 150 billion naira to facilitate their business. Is this, what are we going to call this? Is this government support program or government bailout or what? Government can invest in private businesses in different ways. They can buy equity, they can grant interest-free loans, they can subsidize small businesses, they can grant export assistance, give grants, but all of these are lumped under economic development in quote. Even then, there's always been an ideological divide over these undefined investment in some people's businesses. So this kind of request by Miyetti Allah for 150 billion naira in the manner that is being suggested is likely to cause more problems than it is solving, in my view. Because the truth is, how are you going to spend public funds, which is taxes generated from other businesses, from people like you and me, to fund some people's businesses, which this really is. Miyetti Allah should apply to multilateral agencies or whatever for money to fund their business. There are, as you said, other animal husbandry businesses in Nigeria. Why should government fund Miyetti Allah alone?
I agree with you, Modele Sharafa.
If Nigerians don't eat beef, we will eat chicken.
I agree with you on the point about sources of financial support. The CBN, Central Bank of Nigeria, actually has an anchor borrowers program dedicated to agriculture.
Correct.
And people can go there and not ask the federal government directly. Mm-hmm. We'll take a short break now. We'll return shortly, and the conversation will continue. Welcome back to This Day Live, the Sunday Talk Show. The program continues here on the Arise News channel, and I still have with me in the studio Professor Bola Akintenrewa, Modele Sharafa Yusuf, Arise News analyst, Yemi Adamolekun, Executive Director in Office and Professor Victor Ariole, professor of French and Francophone Studies. Before we went on break, we were talking about this big issue about Miyetti Allah. Professor Ariole, let me come to you.
Seriously, I have a different view. It seems they have opened up the clue for government to be sensible about expansion and value chain. It's not only Miyetti Allah, it's just that Sharafa Yusuf was mentioning something about not mixing Miyetti Allah with herdsmen. I quite agree. It's necessary to have all the people in those areas of agric expansion and agric allied to come up with either 150 billion need to open up their own businesses so that government can earn tax from them. And in that case, it's not necessarily going to government. The banks are ready to syndicate such loans. For sure, it's not only oil and gas industry, the banks go on syndicating. They should be in position to syndicate loan for people who are dealing in ranches, which will come out with milk and meat and cheese and whatever, and go on to the agriculture, those in fish industry and those in the bird industry. So that Nigeria will have expanded agricultural producing items. So I feel the clue is good, but the government should really take it out, not only for the herdsmen alone, for other people also. Very, very helpful.
Well, the only problem here, Professor Ariole, was I said there's mixed messaging from Miyetti Allah. The same Miyetti Allah that is asking for 150 billion for ranching was also, through the same spokesperson, Saleh Al-Hassan, attacking Governor Ganduje of Kano, who was advocating that ranches would be very useful. So where exactly
we have to disregard Miyetti Allah and face what it takes to help the herdsmen.
And Sheikh Gumi has been very consistent in supporting banditry.
No, I don't support those areas. I'm not talking about banditry. Banditry is criminal, and no government should support banditry at all.
Okay.
Yes, but hard-working people should be helped.
Very quickly.
Yes.
So that we can move on.
When you talk about banditry, you are necessarily saying that we are dealing with criminalities. A criminal, for whatever reason Gumi will want to come up with, a criminal must not be given any amnesty, and must not be given whatever privilege or etc. Let me make this point clear. Now, Gumi is on record to have said that bandits will need to feel safe. They must be safe. And I agree that, okay, let bandits be given a safety, but behind the bars, in the prisons. If he is calling for amnesty for bandits, I also agree. Let them be taken to open correctional places, open prisons, like the one in Kaduna. Why? Because he admitted that they are bandits by using the word bandit. The moment you admit that they are bandits, if you are looking for safety for them, then take them to the prisons. That is the best safe places, because there's no kidnapping there. Nobody is harassing you there. You are very safe behind the bars. So nothing can happen to you. That is my own interpretation of his calling for safety. And in this case, you cannot accuse the federal government of Nigeria of aiding and abetting promoting banditry when you are actually aiding it. That is self-contradiction. So in this case, the beauty of it all is that if you are giving 150 billion naira to people who wants to engage in ranching, beautiful, but extend the same 150 billion naira to all other economic actors in the agricultural sector. That is where the fairness is. But you cannot give any priority, preferential treatment to one particular group of people and at the same time deny all of that. Look.
Well, and then quickly, Yemi, I don't think there is a contradiction in putting together the two subjects, because Miyetti Allah, through the same spokesperson, has said that it's the federal government of Nigeria that is promoting banditry by not taking care of the herders who have become cattle herders who have become bandits. But very quickly as you can make the point, over to you.
Thank you. I mean, initially, I did agree with Ms. Modely, but I think to your point, the fact that they also, so structurally, they are different entities. Banditry is a crime, so let's deal with it in that context. And Miyetti Allah is concerned about ranching, let's deal with it with that context. But to your point, when Miyetti Allah spokespeople start in themselves conflating the issues, we do that as well. But I think I do agree with her fundamentally that we should keep them as separate issues. So on Miyetti Allah's issue, I think I agree with her that it's not government's business. Provide an enabling environment. It's not the people who own the cattle that are carrying AK-47s through Nigeria. So deal with the people who own the cattle and let them invest in the business that they're in. Now, to Sheikh Gumi, I mean, very quickly, I don't see why the fact that the federal government is actually not addressing him directly, for me, says all we need to hear. And I completely agree with Prof. A nice place for the bandits to have safety is in jail. So the fact that he continues to separate the fact that they're criminals from being the fact that they are aggrieved with the state and is trying to make a case for them, and the federal government is actually not addressing him head on, says a lot.
Well, thank you very much, Yemi Adamolekun. Well, let's take our next topic. The head of the Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says he's concerned about a possible vaccine war over access to COVID-19 inoculations. Dr. John Nkengasong says such a dispute will mean we will all be losers. He spoke in response to reports that the Serum Institute of India is suspending major exports of the AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine in order to meet rising demand at home. The Indian vaccine manufacturer is the source of the AstraZeneca shots being shipped to Africa under the COVAX initiative to ensure access for low and middle income countries.
Me personally, with a sense of helplessness, but I remain hopeful that the power of humanity will prevail and that our collective consciousness will also prevail. I believe strongly that we should continue to be our neighbor's keeper. And the only way we do that is to exercise that strong sense of solidarity and coordination. And with the wisdom that, with the common wisdom that this virus will not be defeated anywhere, no matter how smart you are to vaccinate all your people, and the virus is still circulating in other parts of the world, especially in Africa with a population of 1.2 billion people. And that is extremely important for that wisdom to prevail. And I remain hopeful that that wisdom will prevail over time. There is absolutely no need for us as a world, as humanity, to go into a vaccine war. In this pandemic, we'll all be losers.
Well, Professor Akinterenwa, let me come to you. Vaccine nationalism, vaccine diplomacy, vaccine rivalry, threats of vaccine war, particularly between the EU and the UK, although they've been talking to see how they can deal with the problem and place the proper emphasis on global solidarity and cooperation. The other day, Italy, Mario Draghi, the Prime Minister, stopped shipments from European factories to Australia. Now, Africa is at a great disadvantage because of the need in India. India would rather take care of its own interests first before it will allow vaccines meant for Africa under the COVAX facility. Isn't this an indication of how dependent and how vulnerable African countries are?
You cannot be more correct again. And if we are being told that everybody will be losers in the event of vaccine war, it's unnecessarily undermining the situational reality on the ground. First of all, vaccine war, you cannot do away with it. And you have just given a number of reasons. The first one is, the issue is that you have just talked about vaccine nationalism. Vaccine nationalism is simply to let you know that, look, the producer, the producing country must survive first before you survive. That's the beauty of national sovereignty. National survival first. Why should any country aid you to survive to its own detriment? It's not possible. So in this case, Nigerian artists, scientists, have come up with 2 types of, vaccines. Those should be encouraged, and let's see where the extent to which we can go and compete with them. You see the fact on ground today, the number, of people who have taken the vaccines so far should not in any case give room for the 3rd variant to exist. So,
well, Europe is already talking about the 3rd wave. But Professor Ariole, what do you think? What should African countries do in particular? Prof has cited the example of Nigeria coming up with 2 candidates, but still, we are helpless.
No, man, we can't be completely helpless. Thank God CBN has given money to some people to develop the vaccine that will be for Nigeria.
And under the Economic Sustainability Program, we are told about 400 billion has just been released.
Yes, it's not a difficult thing. As far I've been saying it. You can't have scientists in Nigerian universities and tell me they cannot produce vaccine that will help Nigerians to survive. Whether the raw material or whatever, even within the plastic production process that will contain the vaccine, we have it in Nigeria. What is oil and gas industry doing? That they can produce the packaging that can help Nigeria. It is there. It's just that the political will is not there. Like we know about Nigeria, they would be interested in what comes from outside and encouraging what is inside. Our politicians definitely are. That's what I'm trying to insist on. We can do it, and it is possible. Like people have said, we have vaccine in Port Harcourt, vaccine production in Jos. We have it in Lagos, and they have been left for years doing nothing, getting no support. It could be revived very fast and very quickly and drastically. And within 6 months or 1 year, like it was done in USA, we will come up with something valid.
Well, Modele Sharafa Yusuf, Africa is especially disadvantaged in the face of this vaccine rivalry that the world faces. What should African countries be doing? What lessons should they learn?
For me, getting the vaccine is one thing. Deploying the vaccine is the biggest challenge that I see right now. African countries hope to vaccinate 60% of about 1.3 billion people within the next 1 year to achieve herd immunity. But as we speak, at least about 10 African countries have not even received a single vial of vaccine. That is a big problem. And the countries that have received vaccines are not even deploying them properly. There's what we call, there's this fear that we seem to have of getting vaccinated. Nigeria has received about 4.2 or 4.3 million doses of the vaccine.
3.9 million.
MTN also gave about 300,000 doses, so that's about 4.2 altogether.
Yes, you're right.
That Nigeria currently has. And as at yesterday evening, only about 370,000 people have been vaccinated. So what's the problem? Why are people not getting vaccinated? What is government doing to encourage people to get vaccinated? That is my problem.
Well,
Nigeria, you want to say something?
No, I wanted to say we'll take a quick commercial break, and when we return, this is the Live the Sunday Talk Show. We continue. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to This Day Live, the Sunday Talk Show here on the Arise News channel. Still with me here in the studio, Professor Bola Akintoye, Director General, Polytech Center for International Diplomacy and Strategic Studies. Modele Sharafa Yusuf, Arise News analyst, veteran journalist. Yemi Adamolekun, Executive Director in Office Enough, and Professor Victor Ariole, Professor of French and Francophone Studies at the University of Lagos. We'll take our next topic after that brief commentary on COVID-19, immunization, vaccines, and Africa. The incumbent president of the Republic of Congo, Denis Sassou Nguesso, has been re-elected after spending the last 36 years as the country's leader. According to provincial election results announced on Tuesday, Nguesso won 88.57% of the votes. The 77-year-old politician has been in power since 1979 and retained his office in 1997 after losing the country's multi-party election 5 years earlier in 1992. His wide margin victory was not unexpected, considering that the lead-up to the election was marred by ballot boycotts from the main opposition party and the death of Guy Brice Colelas, another presidential candidate who reportedly died of COVID-19. Critics have accused Nguesso of one of the world's longest-serving rulers of high-handedness, intolerance for corruption, and reluctance to even how the economic inequality are ravaging the nation. Well, Yemi Adamolekun, let me start with you on this. Denis Sassou Nguesso, another sit-tight leader, and you recall that in 2015, the constitution was changed in the Republic of Congo, former Congo-Brazzaville, to allow for an endless term for the president. So clearly, we have in Congo another president who wants to remain in office for life. Your take?
I mean, it's unfortunate. It's a reflection of sort of Africa's transition from colonialism to revolutionaries who then become presidents for life in some places, and to sort of the weak engagement of citizens. So Nigeria, we talk about it around the context of the Office of the Citizen. We have platforms like Fix Politics that's trying to increase education and awareness on the part of citizens. They have legal backing that has allowed him to do this. Unfortunately, as you said, his competitor died of COVID. But it's really just there's a lot of work to need to do. Unfortunately, the work within has to be matched with work externally in terms of who Congo does trade with, who Congo engages with, and what sort of pressures are put on a human rights perspective, a freedom of speech and freedom of press perspective. It's unfortunate, but leadership on the continent is lacking in this area, so it's kind of hard for one leader to point a finger at another leader for their bad behavior. I wonder, as our president has congratulated him, right? I'm sure he has.
That's tongue-in-cheek. But Professor Ariole, I mean, he won over 88% of the vote, but the opposition leader died on the day of the election.
No, but it's expected.
From COVID-19 complications. That's Guy Brice Colelas. Is there any connection?
No, it's expected. Sassou Nguesso is a man known in Brazzaville as like a lord. Like we have Mobutu once in Zaire. It's just the same thing in Congo Republic. Because he was once a military man who took power, and he was involved in partially involved in the assassination of Mariam Ngwabi, and he also removed Yomi Opango as a leader. The only democratic process they have had was when Professor Lissouba was the president, and he was also the one who overthrew Lissouba. Pascal Lissouba. Exactly. So it's like he is the only one man ruling Congo beyond their democratic process that brought in Lissouba. Their first independent man, Delemba, is also an issue that couldn't last for long. So we know that Sassou Nguesso is going to live like Mobutu Sese Seko. It has to be by force to remove him. The same way within the whole Central African countries, within Central Africa, whether Cameroon, whether Chad, whether Central African Republic, whether Congo Democratic Republic, whether all of them, they will all be in the same cage of perpetuation of power. We know. And it can only take drastic force to remove such people. And Lissouba is heading towards that. Because his friends, when Gabon man was there, that's Bongo.
Omar Bongo.
Bongo, in short, Bongo is his in-law. When he was there, it was the only big support he had within to keep himself on. Umaru Bongo is gone, and Gabon is partially shaky, and I'm very sure that what happened to Mobutu could definitely happen to Lisuba. There is no doubt about that.
Well, Modele, we have just 4 minutes to go. But very quickly, how do we make the people's votes count in Africa? Ngueso's legacy so far is one of corruption, poverty, inequality. The economy of that country is in the doldrums. And yet, he got over 88% of the votes. Who voted for him? Turnout was over 66%. Who voted for him?
Well, your guess is as good as mine, Ruben. But for me, how do they keep getting away with it? Is the question that we need to ask ourselves. When Yahya Jammeh of Gambia, Robert Mugabe of Zimbabwe, Omar al-Bashir, when they were all ousted, we thought we were seeing the end of sit-side dictators in Africa, but they have remained. Yoweri Museveni, Paul Kagame, Paul Biya of Cameroon, and Sassou Nguesso of Congo. Several wannabes are waiting in the wings. You know, as we said, they've gotten away with all kinds of things. Despite corruption, despite incompetence, they're still there. So I think for me, the reasons they keep getting away with it and they keep hanging on to power is that the criticism is often muted. And sometimes they have considerable support, even among their citizens, to remain in power. Paul Kagame is one such person. Sometimes also it is too dangerous to speak out, so people just tend to roll with the punches and get on with their lives. Well, at other times, they sometimes justify their continuous stay with the need to establish political order and deliver development, which sometimes resonates with the citizens and foreign investors. That's a particularly insidious tactic.
Yes, thank you, Modele. On that point, I mean, Paul Kagame is described as a benevolent dictator, but I don't think the same can be said of Sassou Nguesso.
Agree.
Professor Akinterewa, just 1 minute to go.
If Denis Sassou Nguesso was elected, or lost election 1992 to Pascal Suba, how do we explain his acceptability at the level of the people? Second point, in 2015, you rightly pointed out, he came up with a constitutional amendment. The amendment now removed the ban on 70 years and plus to say, no, there wouldn't be any age limit. You can contest. Then he came up with another amendment saying now that, look, in this case, the multi-party election, which he introduced, and when he scrapped the 2-term limit, what do you expect? The people should have protested, but they are not protesting. This is why he's always elected.
Well, thank you very much, Professor Akinterewa, Professor Areole, Yemi Adamolekun, and Modele Sharafa Yusuf. And thank you for watching. You've been watching This Day Live, the Sunday talk show here on Arise News. I'm Ruben Abati. From my entire team here in Lagos, it's bye for now. And thank you very much for watching. We'll see you again next Sunday. Thank you.